Warning, this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Thanks for tuning in to Harvesting Happiness today for a healthy serving of consciously prepared brain food. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen, your host. For more than 13 years, I've been handcrafting these sound ideas for better well-being. Each week, I love spotlighting diverse thinkers and doers who are contemporary trendsetters and change agents, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. I invite you to listen up and change the way you think about human happiness. Our award-winning content is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Alrighty then, let's dive in. This episode offers psychosocial education designed to inspire and motivate our listeners. The information provided does not constitute a therapeutic relationship nor a substitute for professional mental health care. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, call 911, go to your nearest emergency room, or for listeners in the United States, text 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This episode explores human sexuality and is intended for mature audiences. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where you will learn about enhancing happiness. As we talk about the mind-body connection to sexual health and well-being, my guest today is Dr. Greg Lewis, who is an assistant professor at the Department of Intelligent Systems Engineering at Indiana University, as well as an assistant research scientist at the Kinsey Institute. Dr. Greg Lewis's research involves the use of contact sensors to collect physiological signals in the lab and in the field, as well as the development of non-contact sensors to extend his research into real-world environments, such as at home, at the office, or in the classroom. Let's get to it, Greg. I am so excited to talk to you about how we can enhance our happiness through the bedroom activities.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really pleased to be here with you.
I am excited because you've got research that talks about the crossroads of healthy sexual expression and higher rates of well-being. We want to know the data.
Well, thanks. Yeah, a lot of my work deals with how we interact as social creatures and just the essential nature of sociality and human biology and how that impacts on our health and our wellness. And that includes sexual health. It also includes mental health. And it even includes other kinds of physical health. So our social lives impact on everything from our digestion to our sleep, to our cardiovascular fitness, and to our sexual well-being.
So when we talk about the work you do in intelligent systems engineering and how it relates to the research and what we're talking about today in terms of sexual expression and well-being, talk a little bit about how you do that.
Yeah, sure. So the department, Intelligent Systems Engineering, is quite broad in its focus. But what unifies us, I would say, is that we are trying to take a more holistic approach to engineering, really understand not just the one thing that we might manipulate or build, but how it fits into the whole system. So for me, I'm interested in the whole human being and how their health is maintained and how it is impacted by the outside world. And I am, by training, a bioengineer, although I have a background in psychology as well as my bachelor's. And so I'm a sensors and signals person. I try to get as much information out of the body in as reliable a way as I can, in as many environments as I can, so that we can see how things change second by second within a person and how that's affected by, say, who they're with or what they're doing or how they're feeling. And then some of my work looks at the intervention side, trying to help people improve and recover. And so I work with therapists and doctors and educators, but then I'm trying to provide that signal from the body about what's changing, what's happening in the moment. And so for that, I do a lot of my engineering work on building new devices or new ways to get at that information in a wider range of places.
This is really cool work, right? I mean, it's using science to decode some of the ephemeral parts of the human condition as well.
Very much. Yeah. Yeah. I would say that, like I was saying about trying to be holistic, if the question is so narrowly focused, it's probably not me who's the one who's trying to address that. I try to grab at these bigger problems bigger questions like what makes us a better person and how we can support each other. And then I try to provide that objective measurement science data to back up those research questions.
So when we talk about a healthy sex life, I don't think there's any one prescription for that, right? Talk a little bit about what you've discovered, because what might be considered healthy or satisfying to one person might be very different to another. But I think the question is the sensation of having or the feeling of having a satisfying sex life, how it impacts our physical and emotional well-being, how we report our
Yeah,
ourselves.
that's a wonderful question. Yeah, and I think very well put, because yeah, what is healthy or optimal for one person is not necessarily that for someone else. And so I'm really grounded in this understanding that each of us has our own sense of the environment that we're in. And one of the sort of base things that we're doing at a really low biological level is determining whether that environment is safe. And sex is something that you engage in, ideally, in an environment that is first making you feel safe and therefore comfortable to engage and explore with someone else or other people. And so when we see that people are made to feel unsafe during sex, it has just really profound negative impacts on their mental health, their well-being, and even their physical health. And so I try to understand that through what's changing in this system that links our feelings to our body, and that's through our nervous system that links our brain and body.
So, what I think I hear you saying is that the sense of psychological safety is at the root of the self reporting of satisfaction. We're not talking about sexual release, talking about that the sense of emotional and mental satisfaction that comes from sexual expression.
Yeah, exactly. How am I going to feel about that encounter
Yeah.
tomorrow or a week later? So much of that is about, did I enter into that from a place of safety? And that really opens the door to a wide range of types of sexual activity and enjoyment for different people. But if you don't sort of come in through the doorway of safety, then it changes the flavor of that for how we think about it and how we feel about it in the future.
This is of interest to me because I think in terms of healthy sexual expression, it might not necessarily even be in relationship with another person. Not everybody, there is a portion of the population who they don't engage in sexual relations with others by
Absolutely.
choice, right? But that
Yeah,
doesn't mean that they're not able to experience pleasure or connection.
absolutely. Yeah. And then for them, their doorway to safety, their baseline that gives them that sense of safety, it maybe doesn't include another individual in the room physically touching them. But that doesn't mean that they aren't still a human, which means that they are a social creature, which means that
Yes.
they look for other people for cues that this is a safe place, that they're welcomed, and that they can enjoy things just like everyone else. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the components of psychological safety, because in my perception of it, it's not only the environment, the physical environment, but it's where we as an individual, what our set point is. That if we're
Yeah,
not necessarily trusting or not trusting of ourselves, it will be hard to feel safe in any environment, no matter if it's safe or not.
yeah, it's very true. A lot of the work that people do with their therapists or other sort of care providers is to help first build that sense of safety within their own body, within their own skin. And some of my work, I know that we'll talk about more later, touches more on the impact of trauma on some of these systems. And that really can make it so that you just don't feel safe inside your own body. And it's a lot of work to then help a person recover that ability to feel
Yeah.
safe within themselves. But that opens the door to then feeling safe with other people. And I would say they're not really separable concepts. Like that's what I say, we're social creatures. We exist through each other. And that safety has to be in some ways created with other human beings that you do form that trust with. It's very hard to then feel safe completely by yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think humans are designed to have safety as solo agents. Like we
Very,
really need each other in community in order to be secure.
very much, yeah. And that's what our evolutionary journey sort of created this species that is dependent on one another. And I feel like it's a tragedy when people lose that sense that safety and security comes through each other, like you said, through community.
And the sexual expression component, whether it to whatever degree that might be. And I think it's really important to share that the context of this subject matter is shame free. In other words, no one's judging what that expression should look like, but the fact that it is part of the human condition that leads to optimizing well-being, I should say.
Optimizing, probably a
Yeah.
better word, but
Yeah.
either way,
I'm making words up today.
that's great, because we can be creative creatures and we
Yes.
can invent new words. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say there's a range of things that we do together as social creatures, and sex is such an important, basic one of those things. But we enter into, whether it's play, whether it's sport, whether it's music, whether you're creating music with other people or listening to music with other people. We experience these things optimally in a safe social environment where we love the people that we're doing it with, that we enjoy, that they make us feel safe, and maybe they make us then feel safe enough to really get our heart rate up, whether that's playing basketball or having sex or listening to a rock concert. We can enter into that like charged, mobilized physiological state and enjoy it because we started there with people that we already trusted and felt.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you look at modern culture, and it ties into emotional and social intelligence. And if you're not being taught those components, whether it's in the home or in school or in college, it's pretty challenging to go forth in the world and feel good, to give oneself permission for this kind of quantum pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of the signals that we get socially are more about go and find your reward, find your fun, find your money, find
Yeah.
your home, find your new car, and we even sometimes talk about partners in that way, that you're going to find this, person that, ticks all the boxes for you or whatever. And it jumps past the finding the group that makes you feel safe and feel like yourself and feel like you can now express yourself and be comfortable, and then you can enjoy things with those people. It puts the cart before the horse, and it says, go and pursue this career because it's going to make you enough money that then you'll be rich, that then you'll be happy, and it ignores a lot of the steps along the way that are basic to our existence as a species, as humans. We need to do it together.
It's like I've never really thought about what you're talking about to this degree, about like that we start with safety. It all sort of emanates from that place of safety to be self actualized. I guess if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But you cannot reach that state of self actualization without that base of safety.
Yeah.
And it extends to every part of our lives, sexual expression included.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And self-acceptance and self-esteem. All of that is tied into safety, which is a very interesting perspective. And it makes total sense.
Yeah. And it's, to me, reflected in you can look around at our animal cousins and sort of see this degree of difference, right? Our mammals that we share more in common with, and our primates that we share even more in common with, are so social first. They exist as the family unit or the clan or the pride, and in that group, what that group does is it gives each member of that group safety from which they can then, I don't know,
do their
be
thing.
The alpha male hunter, or be the child looking to the adults in the group for lessons, or you need to be safe to engage in sexual activity, especially if you aren't a human living in a home with a door you can lock. If you're a wild animal, like, you need to understand that sexual behavior isn't going to then mean that you're open to threat from a predator.
Although at times we do get ourselves involved in predatory relationships in pursuit of sexual pleasure or in pursuit of relationship or finding a companion that we're willing to take less than we deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there again, like we were saying, that's kind of that cart in front of the horse, where you're going after the pleasure and you're skipping past I'm going to establish a community and an environment that I'm safe in to then find that pleasure. So when you're going to the pleasure first, you're opening yourself up to getting it in ways that are going to be threatening. And then when you look back on it, you're going to feel differently about that experience because you were compromising your safety to achieve it.
And as humans, we're driven by pleasure. Like pretty much we are doing everything that we do to avoid pain and suffering and to derive pleasure. So not just in the bedroom, but like in everything that we do, we basically are conflict avoidant as a species. I mean, there are anomalies, those whose pleasure is the conflict, right? There are characters like that. But for the average human, and so this cultivation, I'm being thoughtful for a second about going back to safety and that being the beginning of everything, that with that sense of safety, it allows us to maybe push the limits of pleasure or allowance of pleasure in a more deeply connected way.
Yeah, exactly. And what I see sort of from a neurobiological standpoint is when you're in that safe environment, it just opens up a whole network of your brain that just is shut off when you are feeling threatened. Like we are still human beings when we're feeling threatened, but we become defensive and reactive, and we lose a lot of that sociality. We become more looking out just for yourself. And then we've sort of shut off, even at the level of like brain activity, access to a lot of these things that really make us more complete and whole people, including like with others and in a sexual relationship or play relationship or anything else.
Let's take a break. And when we come back, we are going to continue the conversation with Dr. Greg Lewis. We're talking about enhancing happiness, how healthy sex lives boosts our well-being. To learn more, please head on over to the kinseyinstitute.org. That's kinseyinstitute.org. And you can find Greg and all of his amazing colleagues on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Kinsey Institute. Here comes the pause. We'll be right back. Wait. Before we take that break, let's chat about the importance of passion and pleasure at home, because research has proven that happiness and sex kind of go together. I know. Sometimes it's hard to feel amorous and in the mood when life demands so much of us and there is so little precious time. Whether it's work, kids, elder care, or other important obligations, finding the time and headspace to get it on can be a challenge. If you're anything like me, distractions, long-term relationship status, familiarity, and natural aging can all contribute to a diminished libido. And chore sex. The good news is that with a little curiosity, interest, and effort, better and more satisfying and entertaining intimacy can be yours at any age or stage of life. Today's sponsor, Beducated, has created a shame-free, sex-positive online platform that has helped tens of thousands of people find their sexual happiness. Beducated has more than 100 online sex and relationship courses led by the world's top experts that will help you master new techniques, reignite the spark, and enjoy more sex with greater confidence and new depths of pleasure. No matter your age, gender, sexual orientation, relationship preference, or sexual experience, Beducated is a safe and discreet, judgment-free resource for folks wanting to enhance intimacy in their relationships. I don't know about you, but for me, foreplay starts long before the sexy time begins. Personally, I am a huge fan of chore play. You know what I mean? When your mate does the to-do list without being asked. That's a turn on and guarantees that my lover man is going to get lucky. Seriously, you can learn new fun tips about foreplay, the art of striptease, and so many more titillating topics at beducate.me/happy. Spice up your love life today at Beducate educate.me/happy and use code happiness to get 40% off the yearly pass. You can even test the waters with a free 24-hour trial. If you're not satisfied, there is a 14-day risk-free money-back guarantee. That's educate.me/happiness and code happiness. Here comes that pause. We'll be right back. Research tells us that happiness is good for our health. Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Want more sound ideas for better well-being? Check out our new bonus edition content, More Mental Fitness by Harvesting Happiness, available exclusively on Medium and Substack. One thing I know for certain, happiness waits for no one, and at times we all need a little support. To learn more about lifestyle management and mental fitness consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. And we're back, continuing the conversation with Dr. Greg Lewis. We're talking about enhancing happiness, exploring the mind-body connection to sexual health and well-being. Let's return to the conversation. All right, Greg, let's talk about our nervous systems and linking how our nervous system behaves. And you're going to get into this from a perspective I know nothing about. So I'm just handing it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And I want to first credit here my mentor, Stephen Porges, developed the polyvagal theory. And that is very much what is going to inform my discussion of this topic, because it is how I understand our nervous system and many of the topics we've already touched on, like the importance of safety. So I am of the mindset that we are one thing. I am not a dualist in that I separate out the brain from the body, and I think that you can study the brain in isolation. I see us as a holistic organism, and that all parts of us are really one, and therefore my fingers and my toes and my heart are all part of my brain. It really is just one thing. And our brain talks to and listens, primarily really listens to our body through our nervous system. I'm an engineer by training. I look at the information that is conducted up to the brain and down from the brain. And actually, most of the information is coming up. Most of what the brain is doing with the body is listening to, are you hungry? Is your heart racing? How are you moving? How are you sitting? What's going on through our senses? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Primarily what it's doing is listening and trying to set then its functions based on where that body is. And what we've learned about the nervous system and its evolution is that there is this very primary function of just determining, is the environment safe right now or dangerous right now? And there's even a level beyond danger, which is sort of imminent death. Like the environment is going to probably, harm me to the point that I can't defend myself. And what we see is that in the nervous system, there are sort of in these three different camps, a whole range of behaviors that become available to the organism or the person when they are feeling safe. But they go away when they're not feeling safe, and a whole different set of behaviors become available when they're feeling threatened. And we talk about that usually as the fight-flight system. So when you're in danger, you might, mobilize your physical energy to fight off the attacker, or you might just turn and run away. There is another system that is even older that we share with fish. I mean, we share with our way distant evolutionary cousins, and that's the shutdown and freeze response. And that happens when fighting and fleeing isn't enough and you get caught by the predator. And then you go into this shutdown shock type of state. And so that basic, there's these three different, we call them states that you might be in: a safe state, a threatened state, and a imminent harm state. It really seems to help map into a lot of different biological processes, how your heart is beating, how you're breathing, how you're sweating, but also brain processes, like which part of your frontal cortex is active, and then behaviors as well. So how you're going to sound in your voice, how you're going to express your emotion on your face are all tied to the activity of these different biological states.
So in the safe zone, the majority of us are more apt to want to be amorous.
Yes.
In the sort of elevated fight or flight mode, there are some people who
Yes.
that for them, that is the safe zone where it gets their juices flowing.
Yes.
I mean, and you'll tell me, you're the researcher, in that like completely live or die state, there may even be a segment of the population that for them, that is that zone of comfort given their stories.
Yeah.
And it's
Given
all
their
based on
personal
story,
history.
right? Like the
Yeah.
history.
Yeah. It's based on where we've come from and what we've experienced already. And yeah, we are constantly just adding to our personal repertoire, and we all become, unique individuals from even before the moment that we're born, because of that, because of those different exposures to different environments. Yeah, but I would say that I'm sorry.
No, no, you should finish your thought. And then I was going to ask you for some tips to for self-regulation and finding that safe zone within ourselves, and how do we look for that in community building.
Yeah. Okay. And I was just going to say first that maybe a lot of us get up into that heightened arousal, mobilized state during sex that's pleasurable or during other activities that are pleasurable. But we might enter into it first from a place of safety. And that
Yeah.
can be very different. And actually, that is usually very healthy to be able to transition between these different states in a predictable way. So knowing that I can start off safe, things can get really
Get
heated and
wild.
excited and everything really wild, but that afterwards, the person that I'm with, the place that I am, I'm going to be able to go back to safety when that's done. That's what's so critical, I think, to a really healthy and
So knowing that there ultimately is no risk to harm. I think
yes,
that's what you're saying. Like
that's what
you
I'm
could go
saying.
through, you could run the gamut of the excitement spectrum,
Yep,
but nothing bad's going to happen. Like things are going to be okay because you feel safe in the relationship.
exactly. Yeah,
And I would think that that is to have the language for that is something that takes practice, right? Because we make our relationships, we feel good with this person or that person, there's a safe zone. And then to get into that state of play, that might take things out of the comfort zone temporarily. Tell us a little bit about what's tied into that, the risk
yeah.
taking.
I guess for both directions, right? For being able to know that you can go into this other state and that you're going to be able to come back. So much of what's in the sort of, I think about the brain is this, Steve talks about it this way too, like an inverted pyramid. There's so much going on at the top up in our cortex. And then a lot of this stuff is happening down at the bottom of the brainstem in this much smaller sort of region of tissue that's monitoring your safety and controlling your heart
Yeah.
rate and your breathing and your movement and everything else. But so much of what's dedicated up in the top in the cortex is to these systems for social cues of state, not just safety. So we spend a lot of our brain space on faces and recognizing faces and who are the people that I know. And it's one of the first things that infants develop is that ability to recognize their caregivers. And we spend a lot also in understanding, well, if I know Lisa, but how is Lisa feeling right now? Like I can see it on you and I'm constantly monitoring it. If I say something maybe inappropriate or unexpected, I'm going to see in the moment the change in your expression and I'm going to feel that and I'm going to react to that. And so when we're in these intimate spaces, we spend an inordinate amount of time looking at each other and smelling each other and touching each other and understanding how each behavior is being received and then how we are navigating that interpersonal dynamic based on that. So we do a lot of this even subconsciously, just tuning into that other person. I would say though, for the people who jump into the wild encounter and skip past the safety, they're missing a lot of that resource in their brain because they didn't start there and they're dealing with things in a different way, which is more of sort of in the moment and personal and not social.
This is fascinating. Let's talk a little bit about some exercises that we can use or practice that help us prepare to prepare for safety, to prepare for play, to prepare for being sexually vulnerable, with our partners.
Yeah. I think one of the things, I mean, we alluded to this a little bit before, that a lot of us, can do this on our own first, or maybe only on our own, right? But knowing yourself and knowing how you feel when you're safe, and also how you can easily manipulate your sense of environment to feel more safe. And the thing that is, I mean, this is not my idea. This is not Steve Porges' idea. This is thousands of years of human history, is we can control how we breathe. Our breath is a portal into this system. When we are feeling safe, our breathing slows, it becomes more deep. We have longer exhalations. This pathway that calms our body, the one that is engaged when we're social, it's active while we breathe out, not while we breathe in terms of the path between the heart and the brain. So when we want to just have more of that sense of safety, we can do something as simple as pausing, taking a few deep breaths, but also, I would say, related to that, feeling how that changes you. You feel it in your skin, you feel it in your muscles, you feel it in the tension on the top of your head. And then you know that when you're out somewhere else and you're feeling the tension in the top of your head and the tingly feeling on your skin, that, oh, it's going this way. I'm feeling unsafe. I'm feeling maybe threatened, maybe aroused, whatever. But you can start to better understand your body and how you communicate with your body.
This is really important. I was going to just interject about the importance of this, because there's the word mindfulness is used so often today, and ad nauseum for some people. I mean, I think it's great, and it is a true practice. But this is one of those interventions that is so simple. It's free. It can be done anytime. There's no prerequisite to do it. You can do it anywhere.
Yep.
And it works. I mean, it does. It de-escalates pretty much any response.
Yeah. And it is then, like I was saying, this portal to then you feel how you were on each side of that. And then you start to recognize it more in your other activities when you're not being conscious about your breath. You start to feel like, oh, my body is in this kind of place or that kind of place. And it's telling you about what your brain is determining about the environment, about how safe you are.
We're nearly out of time for this episode, and we're doing a bonus episode, so you're going to get more of this goodness. But about how important it is to tune in to ourselves, that all of what we're talking about of sexuality and being horny and expressing ourselves in the bedroom, if we're not right with ourselves, it's pretty hard to feel good in a total holistic way that you're talking about when we started this conversation.
Yeah. And that's what I think, that distinction is so critical, right? It's not just about achieving sexual release, right? You can do that in an environment that doesn't make you feel safe. Some people can, at least.
Yes.
And that can be enjoyable in the moment. But what we see in terms of the long-term trajectory, it's that if you are building these safe and trusting relationships, and then within those exploring these, that seems to help more with that holistic sense of goodness about what you've experienced and how you've been behaving.
I want to close this episode with, once again, giving the contact information and where to go for more information, but also say that in our bonus edition, we are going to talk about the interplay between traumatic stress and the disruption in our brain-body systems and how it impacts our sexual health. So that'll be a fantastic conversation. But in the meantime, to learn more about the work of Dr. Greg Lewis and the Kinsey Institute, please go to kinseyinstitute.org on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Please also go to @Kinsey Institute. Dr. Greg Lewis, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a really interesting conversation and definitely gives a spin to the way we look at our sexuality and how we express it, connected to psychological safety.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen on behalf of my guest, Dr. Greg Lewis, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day, and remember to be kind to one another. Want to take a deeper dive into sound ideas for better well-being? Check out our new bonus edition content, More Mental Fitness by Harvesting Happiness, available exclusively on Medium and Substack. Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime, anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes from wherever you get your podcasts. Connect with and follow us on most social media channels. To learn more about lifestyle management and mental fitness consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Harvesting Happiness and More Mental Fitness are produced by me, Lisa Cypers Kamen, Andrea Mengele, Robin Boyd, Andrea Daly, and the awesome team at Podfly Productions, including Eric Begay, Kimberly Beck, and Alec Guess, in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU, RadioMalibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.